You opened a fridge today, maybe more than once. Maybe you stood there staring into a box of cold light and more food than you could finish in a week and thought, there's nothing to eat. That gesture, bored, standing in front of plenty, is one of the strangest things a human being has ever done. Because for almost the entire history of our species, food was not something you got bored of. It was something you could lose. And when it ran out, it did not mean ordering in. It meant a countdown had started, one your body was built to survive, and sometimes didn't. So what did they actually do, our ancestors, when the food ran out? And why is their answer still running right now inside you? For 300,000 years, before farms, before shops, before a year of meals could sit behind a metal door, humans lived at the mercy of the seasons. Some months, food was everywhere. Other months, it simply vanished. Here is the short answer. When the food ran out, ancient humans did not panic, and they did not just die. They had a playbook, sharpened over 10,000 generations. They moved, they shared. They fell back on foods you would never touch, and their bodies did something yours still does tonight. But here's the part nobody tells you. The solution they finally found to end hunger forever, the thing we still call progress, did not end famine. It invented it. To see how, start in a world with no wall between you and starvation. We picture prehistoric life as a constant, desperate scramble for food. Starving figures, ribs showing, always one bad day from the end. For a long time, anthropologists believed that too. Then in the 1960s, an anthropologist named Richard Lee went to live with the Dobju-Hunsi, hunter-gatherers of the Kalahari Desert, one of the harshest places on Earth. What he found broke the picture completely. The Juhuansi worked on average only 3 to 4 days a week to feed themselves. The rest of the time, they rested, visited, told stories, and danced. In 1968, an anthropologist named Marshall Salins took Lee's data and gave these people a title that stunned his field: the original affluent society, not because they had much, but because they wanted little and got it easily. So if life was that comfortable, where does the hunger come in? Because it did come. And the first thing they did when food got scarce reveals everything. They did not fight the shortage. They walked away from it. A hunter-gatherer band was never tied to one place. When the animals thinned, or a waterhole dried, or one valley was picked clean, they simply moved to the next. Their whole way of life was built around this freedom. Few possessions, nothing you could not carry on your back. Because the ability to leave quickly was itself a kind of insurance against hunger. The numbers tell one story, the lived reality tells another. Picture a camp at the end of a dry season, 20,000 years ago. The grass is brittle and gray. The children are quieter than usual. An elder looks at the empty snare lines, then at the far hills, where a faint smudge of green still holds. There is no meeting, no vote. By morning, the shelters are down, the bundles are on backs, and the whole world they own is walking toward the green. To them, hunger was simply a direction you moved away from. But you cannot always outrun it. Sometimes the lean season stretched everywhere at once. And that is where the second strategy came in. When the good food ran out, they ate the food nobody wanted. Richard Lee counted the plants the Juhuansi knew, 85 different species they recognized as edible. On an ordinary day, they bothered with only the best 20 or so. But in a hard year, that list of 85 became a lifeline. Bitter roots, tough tubers you dug for an hour, gums and seeds, foods that filled the stomach far more than they pleased it. And above all, one food held the line: the mongongo nut, drought-resistant, everywhere, packed with 5 times the calories and 10 times the protein of a farm grain. When everything else failed, the mongongo did not. When an anthropologist asked one Juhuansi man why his people had never taken up farming like their neighbors, his reply has echoed ever since. "Why should we plant," he said, "when there are so many mongongo nuts in the world?" Sit with what that reveals. To him, farming was not progress. It was desperate work you did only if you had to. He had a wild pantry that never needed planting, Why would he chain himself to a field? And notice who kept the band alive in these lean times. Not the hunters chasing meat that came maybe once in 10 tries. It was the gatherers, mostly the women, bringing in the steady, unglamorous plants day after day. The hunt was the story people told. The gathering was the food people ate. The third strategy was the most human of all. When food ran short, they did not hoard it, they shared it. And this was not simple kindness, it was mathematics. A single hunter is wildly unreliable. Some rare days he brings down a large animal, far more meat than one family can eat before it spoils. Most days he comes back with nothing at all. The anthropologists Kim Hill and Hillard Kaplan, living with the Ache of Paraguay, put hard numbers to it. One hunter's success swung violently day to day, but when the whole band pooled every kill and shared it out, that violent swing flattened into something you could actually live on. So the meat you gave away today was not lost. It was deposited in a bank made of other people. On the day your own hunt failed, and it would, their kills fed your children. Sharing turned a dozen unreliable hunters into one reliable food supply. It is why in these worlds the greedy were not merely disliked, they were dangerous. A man who kept his kill to himself was breaking the one system that kept everyone alive. Generosity was not a virtue here. It was survival, enforced by everyone. Picture the moment a hunt comes back empty. A man walks into camp at dusk with nothing across his shoulders. His feet ache. He has failed his family, but no one turns away from him. Someone is already cutting a strip from a kill that is not his, another man's luck from that morning, and pressing it into his hands. He eats. Tomorrow it may be reversed. The smell of that meat over the fire is the smell of a promise, kept in both directions. Move, fall back, share. 3 strategies layered on top of each other that made a healthy hunter-gatherer almost impossible to truly starve. But what happened when all 3 failed at once? When even the mongongo was gone and there was nowhere left to walk? Then the last line of defense was not out in the world at all. It was inside their own flesh. Their bodies were built at the deepest level for exactly this moment. In 1962, a geneticist named James Neal proposed an idea he called the thrifty gene. In a world of feast and famine, he argued, the humans who survived were the ones whose bodies seized every spare calorie in the good times and locked it away as fat. That fat was not a flaw. It was a battery, a famine reserve worn on the body, carried into the lean months when there was nothing left to eat but the self you had stored. They helped that reserve along too. In the good season, they gorged deliberately, fattening themselves like the animals they hunted. And they learned to hold time still, drying strips of meat in the sun, rendering fat, caching food in cold pits and hollow trees against the months to come. But when the stored food was gone, and the stored fat began to burn, the body did something almost unbelievable. It started carefully to consume itself. We know what that looks like in agonizing detail. Not from ancient bones, but from a locked ward in Minnesota in 1944. There, a scientist named Ansel Keys took 36 healthy young men and slowly starved them on purpose to learn how to save the millions starving across a world at war. Over 6 months, they lost more than a quarter of their body weight, but the mind changed even more than the body. They became obsessed with food. They dreamed of it, read cookbooks for hours, hoarded and guarded their tiny meals, cold all the time, apathetic to everything but eating, their own bodies quietly dismantling muscle just to keep the heart beating. And Keys was studying volunteers who knew the very day it would end. For your ancestors in a real famine, there was no end date. That obsession, that cold, that slow consuming of the self was simply what the last of the food felt like. Picture the deepest part of a bad winter in a cave lit by a single failing fire. The stored food is gone. The faces around the flames are all bone and shadow now. No one is telling stories. Every mind in that circle has narrowed to one point, the memory of food, the hope of it. A child cries, then is too tired to keep crying, and the adults sit and endure and burn the last of themselves because waiting is the only strategy they have left. And when even endurance was not enough, our ancestors faced choices we can barely let ourselves picture. The weakest sometimes gave up their share. In the rarest, darkest famines, humans did the unthinkable to buy one more week of life. These were not the acts of monsters. They were the arithmetic of a species with no other option left. This is the world your body still remembers. A world where food was love, and mathematics, and war, and sometimes an impossible choice. And then around 12,000 years ago, one group of humans believed they had finally solved it. Forever. And then something changed, not overnight. No one woke one morning and decided to become a farmer. But slowly, in a handful of places, humans began to do something entirely new. Instead of chasing food, they started to grow it. It must have felt like the answer to every hungry night in human history. Plant the seed, wait, harvest, pile the grain in a pit, and never again be at the mercy of the seasons. This was agriculture, and we still call it the dawn of civilization. But in 1987, a scientist named Jared Diamond gave it a colder name, the worst mistake in the history of the human race. Because farming did not end famine, it invented it. A hunter-gatherer with 85 foods and the freedom to move was almost impossible to truly starve. The farmer was something new, something fragile. A farmer bets everything on a few crops: wheat, rice, corn. When the rains fail or a blight sweeps in, there is no walking to the next valley. The one food is gone, and you cannot eat the empty field. Every great famine in recorded history, every single one, happened to farmers, never to hunter-gatherers. The bones confirm it. When humans took up farming, they got shorter. Their teeth rotted. New diseases born of crowded villages and stored grain and animal filth tore through them. They worked far harder for a narrower, poorer diet. The wild pantry of 85 foods shrank to one bowl of the same porridge every single day. And the freedom to walk away from hunger was traded for a field you could never leave, and a granary that could be emptied by one bad harvest or stolen by one strong neighbor. So why did we ever do it? Why trade 3-day work weeks for endless labor and famine? Probably because no one really chose it. It crept in, field by field. And by the time the true cost was clear, there were far too many mouths, born of all that farmed food, to ever go back. Agriculture did not free us from hunger. It multiplied us, chained us to the soil, and handed us a new kind of starvation, one we had built with our own hands. But it left behind something stranger still. It left the ancient body shaped by 300,000 years of feast and famine, stranded in a world it was never designed for. And that body is the one you are living in right now. Sit with that for a moment, and then think again about the fridge, because this story does not end 12,000 years ago. It ends in your kitchen tonight. That thrifty gene James Neal described, the one that told your ancestors' bodies to grab every spare calorie and store it as fat against the coming famine, you still carry it. Every one of us does. It is one of the deepest instructions written into the human body. But the famine it is waiting for is never coming. For the first time in 300,000 years, the food does not run out. It just sits there, behind the metal door, more than you could ever need. And your body, still braced for a winter that will never arrive, keeps doing the only thing it knows. It stores, and stores. The same survival gift that carried your ancestors through the lean season is now, in a world of endless plenty, quietly making us sick. The obsession those starving men in Minnesota felt, the mind circling food, 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 that circuit is still in you as well. It is why a world of cheap, endless calories can feel less like freedom and more like a trap you cannot think your way out of. So you are not weak when you stand at the fridge, full but unsatisfied. You are running software written for a world that no longer exists, a world where the food ran out, and craving it, storing against it, remembering it, was the razor-thin difference between living and dying. The next time you close a full fridge, bored, remember what that gesture would have meant to the people whose bodies you inherited. To them, it would have looked like a miracle and a warning. That world is gone now, but it never really left you. It's still there, in the instincts you never question and the fears you can't explain. If you want to keep uncovering the vanished worlds that made us who we are, subscribe to the Sidro Files. A like or a share helps the channel more than you'd think. I'll see you in the next one.